Latest suicide data show the depth of the U.S. mental health crisis. While material well-being has improved, America's emotional distress has climbed to crisis levels. All right, so many statistics say that life in the U.S. is getting better, and we know how ridiculous those statistics are in most cases. Yet something isn't right. In 2017, 47,000 people died by suicide, and there were 1.4 million suicide attempts. U.S. suicide rates are at the highest level since World War II. This is according to the U.S. Centers for Disease and Control Prevention. And it's getting worse. The U.S. suicide rate increased on average by about 1% a year from 2000 through 2006 and 2% a year from 2006 through 2016. Although suicide is the starkest indicator of mental distress, others abound. Drug overdoses claimed 70,000 lives in 2017, and 7.3 million, or 7% of U.S. adults, reported suffering at least one major depressive episode in the past year. Life expectancy has fallen for 3 straight years, in part because of the rise in drug overdoses and suicide. That's the first... Oh, this is an interesting statistic. That's the first 3-year drop since 1915 to 1918. So in the year 2019, with all of the medical advances we have actually seen life expectancy drop for 3 years in a row. And when is the last time that happened in this country? 1915 to 1918. Think about all that's changed between 1918 and now. And that's the one thing we've remained to keep constant. Hey, our life expectancy, it's going down. That's a pretty remarkable statistic when you break it down. And suicide rates are climbing. And we know, Lucy's right here, by the way. And we know why that is, despite the way a lot of these statistics are arranged and cherry-picked, which I love. I love the way people arrange the unemployment statistic. People will recognize right away that statistic needs to be taken with a huge grain of salt because it doesn't take into account people that are underemployed. It doesn't take into account people that have stopped looking for work. It doesn't take into account, those are the two big things. And people will point that out whenever they don't like the president. And when they do like the president, they'll point to the unemployment statistic. It's the most, it's just so surface-oriented and short-sighted, where it's like, if they like the president, hey, unemployment's low. If they don't like the president, hey, unemployment's low, but you got to take that with a grain of salt. How about you just remain consistent and say, look, you should always take that statistic with a grain of salt, because it doesn't factor in a lot of things. And when we're living in a gig economy, the fact that it doesn't take in underemployed people basically makes it almost worthless. Not completely worthless, but almost. But people who like Trump, they'll kind of ignore that. And just to be consistent, people that liked Obama when Obama was president, they ignored that part too. They were like, look at unemployment. And then people on the right were like, well, you got to take that with a grain of salt. Now, Trump supporters, look at unemployment. And, people on the left, myself included, saying, well, you got to take that with a grain of salt. But we should always say, got to take that with a grain of salt. But anyway, so despite these statistics, as the article points out, there are some other glaring statistics. Homelessness is on the rise. 40% of homeless people have jobs. They're underemployed. They're not taken into account by that unemployment statistic. A large percentage of Americans can't afford a $500 emergency. A large percentage of Americans, if they live in a different city than a loved one, if that loved one dies, they're not going to have enough money to go to the funeral. Tons of Americans don't have health care. 45,000 people die per year because of lack of adequate health care. Where if they had adequate health care, they'd still be alive. And I bet that statistic doesn't factor in suicide, because I bet a lot of people who commit suicide, that applies to them. If they had proper health care, they might not have done it. If they were able to go see a psychiatrist, maybe they'd still be here. And we've talked about suicide on this show before. Obviously, it's not an easy topic. I guarantee all of us have lost somebody to suicide. Myself, I mean, I'm a comedian, for fuck's sake. It's pretty much annually. There's at least somebody that I know. In fact, definitely. I mean, I can say that without a doubt in my mind. Like, annually, there is at least, one person that I know. And it's really heavy because, I try to approach it from a very non-judgmental place because I don't think... I think I can only so much grasp what that person is going through because... I mean, people love to throw those cliches out like, well, it's a permanent solution for a temporary problem and this and that. It's like, well, you don't really know what was going on in that person's head or what they were going through. You really don't know. You're left to speculate. You don't know the degree of a mental illness they may or may not have had. You don't know the degree of what life threw at them, and maybe it was just too much. You don't know any of that. You can speculate it, but you really don't know what it was like unless you were in their skin. So it's a really tough topic to wrap one's head around. It's a really tough topic to approach. But I do know that in our society, it makes a lot of sense why the statistic would rise, especially right now. Especially right now. Because people don't have access to healthcare. They don't have healthcare. Screw the access word. They don't have healthcare. People, there's such a, there's the whole nature versus nurture thing. And the U.S., the contemporary U.S., is very heavy on the nature side. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Focus on the individual instead of let's try to help each other out, right? That's the ingrained individualism of the contemporary United States. And what does that cause in a lot of people? That causes a lot of people to kind of look at their neighbors. That causes a lot of people to maybe retreat into envy. I saw a quote the other day, and now I'm forgetting it. That was real insightful. But it was something like envy is the destruction of progress, or comparison is the destruction of progress. It was something along that, where when you're looking, and I'm guilty of this myself. I'm guilty of this every day. I think we all are. I think it's human nature. I look at other people and I'm like, oh, so-and-so just got another TV spot. I haven't gotten that yet. Oh, this person just passed me up on subscribers or followers. I'm guilty of doing that. I think we all are. I think every person, oh, so-and-so got this promotion. I was hoping for that. So-and-so's kid can do XYZ. My kid can't. I don't know if parents do that or not. I'd imagine they do. It's human nature, I guess. I don't know. Maybe you don't do that. I don't have kids, so I don't know. And I don't really compare Lucy to other cats because I'm never really around other cats. She is asleep. You tired? She is so tired. She is like out. Can't really see her. Lucy, did you not sleep at night? So we put the air conditioning in our bedroom, because we have like one of those window units for our bedroom that we don't put in until like the summertime, when it's like too hot not to have it, because it is kind of loud, not like crazy loud, but a little louder. And anyway, we put it in for the first time last night. Lucy was really she was stoked. She was just like, oh, this is a new thing. I better investigate this a bunch, even though I've seen this before. Saw this last year, but shit, it's been a minute. Let me reacclimate it. Let me sniff around, make sure it's copacetic. So she might not have slept as much last night, which might be why she's totally chill. She is, yeah. All right, Lucy. Well, right on. So, and if you're looking to reduce stress in your life, and I'm not even trying to be funny here, I'm being very sincere, I recommend a pet. I really do. There aren't words to express how much Lucy has benefited my life. And they know. Animals, when you form a special bond with a pet, they know. Lucy knows when I'm sad. She knows when I'm hurting. She can sense it. And she's always shown up. I mean, I remember one time when my uncle died, like she got it. It's like she knew what was going on, and she was just like right there, and she was like in my lap, and she was like purring, and she was like kind of nuzzling. Now granted, it's like the clues were obvious. I was crying, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, you know, it's not like I was acting totally normal, and she was like, but they have a sense, and they get it. And they help. They help a lot. You know, when I think of tough times in my life, I think of, you know, the people who helped me through it. Friends, family, and, you know, Lucy's part of that too. You know, I think of my pet. I think of my cat. And this cat's been through a lot. This cat even lived in a car for a little bit. Because I put her in foster care for most of that time that I was living in my car, but there was a period of time where like I had to transport her, so she lived in my car with me with all my stuff, and we would like we would have planned stops where I would stop and I would walk her, and she would use a litter box, and then we would proceed on our way. Crazy times. But anyway, so the suicide rate is rising in the United States, and there's it should not be. It should not be. We're the richest country in the world. If somebody needs help, they should be able to get it. They should be able to go see a psychiatrist. They should be able to go to a doctor. They shouldn't have to worry about bankruptcy for medical bills. They shouldn't have to be depressed because they have no vacation time and they have no time off. They shouldn't be depressed because a family member died and they can't afford to go to the funeral. They shouldn't be sad because they don't know if they'll ever be able to send their kid to college because they work 2 and 3 jobs just to survive. They shouldn't worry about, whether or not they're going to be making rent when they're working full time. Lucy's perking up a little bit. So when you look at all those factors, it makes sense why the suicide rate might be rising instead of dropping in the richest country in the world, but there's no reason for it. So, and those problems, hopefully we're going to keep moving forward and start to solve them. But until then, the best thing we can do as individuals is just try to be a good friend, try to be a good family member, try to be a good neighbor. I know it's a cliche, but that's really the best thing we can do. And, if you know somebody who is considering taking their own life, just listen. Just listen the best you can. And talk it out with them. And don't lecture them. Don't throw a cliche. Oh, well, it's a temporary solution to a permanent, or a permanent solution to a temporary. Like, they don't need to hear stuff like that. Hear them out. Respond to what they're saying. And do the best you can. I can't, That's all we can do. All right. Well, so that's a pretty disturbing statistic to wrap one's head around. Suicide rate is rising in the United States, not falling. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you wanna know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make